Everybody ready? We will call to order the City of Rollingwood Park Commission meeting agenda for Monday, February 6th, 2023. We'll start by calling roll. I'll go first. Chad Smith.
Laura Mills.
Nicole Marisi.
Don Hudson.
Melissa Morrow.
Mary Elizabeth Cofer.
Victoria Johnson.
All right, so we can go with public comments first. Any citizens wishing to address the Park Commission for items not on the agenda will be received at this time. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, Park Commission is restricted from discussing or taking action on items not listed on the agenda. Any citizens wishing to address the Park Commission with regard to matters on the agenda will be received at the time the item is considered. Are there any citizens wishing to make public comment? No? If that's the case, then we can move right into discussion and possible action on the minutes from the December 5th, 2022 Park Commission meeting. I read through them and thought they looked okay. Anybody have any comments?
Oh, I just noticed the glass is gone. That's exciting.
Oh,
Plexiglass.
Yeah.
Congrats. That's exciting. That's a step forward.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
progress.
Sorry to
No, it's all right.
derail.
I would make a motion that we approve the minutes from the December 5th, 2022 Park Commission meeting.
I'll second.
Second.
All right. Everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. All right. Looks like that one passes. 3, discussion and possible action to elect a chair of the Park Commission. I understand this is something you have to do once a year. I'm happy to keep serving. But if anybody wants the perks that come with this position, like the reserve parking in the corner office and the pay bump,
When I saw this on the agenda, I thought you were throwing in the towel. I was
Yeah.
like, oh no.
no.
Motion to approve Chad continuing as chair.
I will second that.
Great.
Perks are yours.
Anybody opposed, say nay. Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Update from Western Hills Girls Softball and Western Hills Little League. Steve, you got anything?
Yes, just briefly. Kind of running behind schedule, as I'm sure everyone is after last week, but teams are formed, at least for softball. I'm assuming Little League's probably in the same boat. They're getting close. We should, I know weather's not looking the greatest this week, but you will start seeing some practices this week. I think we did have one team try to come out yesterday. And so I'm still finalizing practice days and times with all the new coaches and everything. And I should have that to you guys in the next week or so. Yes.
Were there issues when they came out?
I don't know.
Okay. When you said try to come out, that made me think that.
Well, they said they were doing a voluntary because, like they said, half the team still didn't have power, and
Yeah.
they were just going to try to come out. I talked to them in the morning. I didn't know if they still made it out. But I know, yeah.
I just wanna make
I
sure
know
the
that
fields are
first. I
available
know the
when they
first
want them.
week or two, people aren't used to us coming out, so I know it takes a little bit of time, and they don't know schedules yet. So we'll hopefully have that all finalized and
And then they'll be
to the-
posted to kind of keep.
yeah, somewhere I guess we'll get it to the commission and we can. I mean, I don't
Just
know
wanna
what
make
the
it as
I don't know
easy as
what the
possible for
final
you.
conclusion was of where to actually put the schedules,
Maybe
whether we
put it to
use
the
the glass
website?
box or.
It needs to be on the website. It needs to be down at this park. We never put anything up at the upper park, like we talked about. But I would say the more you can post it, the better, because I want to make it as easy as possible for you guys and not to have to defend your time there. So
Do we still have the QR codes that if you wanted to rent the space up on the fences? And is it possible if that QR code takes it to a link of also seeing the current schedule?
I
I'm-
tried the QR code the other day and it didn't work.
It did not work?
I went to a dead link or something.
okay, well that needs to be fixed.
Just
I
again,
don't
to
know who
Lori's
that
point,
falls
trying
on,
to
but-
figure out easiest way to communicate with our residents and the park users of when a potential interruption might be with the free space. And of course, schedule to change is a very big thing to put in bold, so that you're not held accountable for something.
We'll be doing some field work. Definitely, I know Little League and we will also on field 2 need some. I hadn't been up there in a while, but I saw, evidently some of the windshields have kind of come apart. That's just plastic ties breaking. So I've been trying to replace them with metal as they've come apart. So hopefully the metal will definitely hold better.
Yeah, last time I did a park walkthrough, the amount of, I thought, zip ties everywhere was insane.
Yeah, it's they gave you the plastic ones, and they say they'll hold to heat and UV rays, but that evidently didn't happen. So as they are breaking, I'm trying to put metal ones on there.
And then can you shed any light or insight to, if I understand it correctly, the turf was denied, and then now y'all are gonna be putting in turf, or seed and sod.
I think I can hit that one. On the boys' side, we were going to try and have tryouts this past weekend, and they pushed it for a week. But they did do a bunch of dirt work on field 1, so you'll see there's no longer grass patches in the infield or anything like that. They didn't have time. They got approved to put in new sod in the infield, which will make a big difference. Natural grass, and they didn't have time to get it done before the baseball season was going to start, so they're going to push that off and do it immediately after the season, probably in June.
Uh-huh,
A little better time to throw down grass anyway.
okay.
Yeah, and I wasn't involved in that meeting, but at least the way I decipher the lease is we're responsible for infield, but outfield should be the city.
For maintenance and operation?
Yeah.
So you, according to your lease, are responsible for the maintenance, because I thought part of your lease agreement was that the city would then be taking care of the maintenance because of your lease amount that you're now paying, so we're not
Correct.
significantly.
Other than the infield, at least in mine, because we're dirt only, and so at least softball agreed that we would do the dirt, but then outfield grass and 3, 4, and 5, like my deciphering was the turf management and all that was going to the city's responsibility.
And then what about field 1?
On field 1, it's kind of unclear who's taking care of the grass in the infield. I think the Little League kind of wants to take care of that, but it's a little bit unclear from the lease, so I think we're going to try and work something out.
Chad and I looked at the lease together, and we're both lawyers, and we both agree that there's ambiguities in the lease in areas, and we also agree that this is a public interest thing for community benefit. We're gonna work together to try to get solutions that work for everybody, to get for me the end result matters as much as anything, which is having quality conditions and good fields, and how we get there we'll do cooperatively, and if we need to amend the lease at some point to clarify things, we will, or if we need to compromise and work things out, we will. But for now, the first goal was to get that infield dirt work done before the season started, and we were actually trying to rush to get the sod done before the season started, but the grass contractor said no, it's not going to happen.
Yep.
And I
Exactly.
think it's a better decision to put it in later afterwards, and I think probably it'll be September when you get past the heat of the summer.
Maybe,
And
yeah.
We'll see. And then on the rest of it, I think we met, I'm Kevin Glasheen, I'm on council, and I'm trying to help deal with some of those issues. And, Chad and I had meetings out there and looked at the whole field conditions, and we met with the folks from One Source, or whatever they're called. It's the John Deere Landscape Supply Company. They actually just bought Whittlesey Landscape Supply.
Oh.
I don't know if
Wow.
you've heard that.
That's-
It happened. And, oh yeah, I'm sorry.
No, they probably kind of hear it, just for the audio.
Okay, sorry. I always forget that. In council meetings, I watched a council meeting the other day, and I realized nobody could hear a word I said. So, to get in the habit. But on the other fields, what we did is we met with the supplier from One Source, is what I'm going to call it, or John Deere Landscapes, and they made some recommendations. Some of the things that, and I've also been talking to Izzy and Ashley and the city staff about what we're doing and why and how. What's the irrigation schedule? We're trying to make sure we have a regular irrigation schedule. Izzy and I walked through the controllers, and they're all programmed properly. I had a landscape business through college of my own, so I know a little bit about, we mowed 50 yards a week, so I know a little bit about turf maintenance and such, and being a real estate developer, I do quite a bit of that. But anyway, we met and looked at it. I'm convinced the irrigation, program is good now. And I'm really glad we've got Izzy and his crew here. Another issue was there was no pre-emergent or fertilizer being used, and so we got a recommendation for that and a schedule for that, which is a 4 times a year program, 2 applications of pre-emergent, 4 applications of fertilizer, and that's supposed to start, was going to maybe be this week, but the ice storm whacked us, so maybe next week. First application will start, and they'll essentially be more loaded during the growing season, so there'll be but there's a schedule and a product and a application rate that I've supplied to Izzy, and it's all within city operational budget. So we should see a big boost from that, both in weed control and in the quality of the turf, and with a regular measured irrigation program, we should see a big difference. I think in the fall, what I'd like to do by the time we get to the fall is I'd like to have a plan for soil amendments for the rest of the fields. Because there is some grading that needs to be done. There's low spots, but there's also compaction, there's low organics, there's poor drainage of the surface soil. And so, and I don't think just aeration's gonna do it. I think if we could get an inch of this soil amendment product, and then that turf is in such bad condition that we're gonna either need to reseed in the fall with like a rye cool season annual that will just hold it all still, and then come back and reseed in the growing season, or more, what would be much better and what I'd really like to see is re-turf the whole thing. And I want to come up with a plan for it along with Chad, and we're working together looking at that stuff, and with you if you'll want to be involved. And then I want to figure out how much it's going to all cost, and then I'm going to figure out where we're going to get the money to pay for it. So, but it needs a lot of work, and we're just trying to figure out, get a plan for, a real specific plan for getting it done, and what it'll cost, and then for paying for it. So,
And are you referring to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, or are you specifically looking at one?
all of them,
Okay.
all
Yep.
of them.
So I think that's good to know for clarification, that we're not only focusing on field 1 at this time, but this is the comprehensive.
No, field one.
The infield work is definitely 1 and 2
Yeah.
Correct.
specific.
But when you
And the
refer
turf-
to turf,
Yeah.
is it the entire park?
Yeah.
I have a question. Were we not using a pre-emergent before this at all?
So, one of my first questions was, what are we doing about pre-emergent fertilizer? And the answer I got was, well, we can't do any of that because council passed a resolution saying we couldn't use chemicals. So I said, well, let me see the resolution. I read the resolution, and it only prohibited, Roundup herbicide and certain organic phosphate pesticides, which is very good policy in my opinion, okay? But that has nothing to do with, common pre-emergence and normal, fertilizer mixes. Right. And so that's when I got a proposal for it, spec'd it, talked to Izzy, the city staff, and everyone said, sure, let's do that. So
Fantastic. Thank you
it
very
hasn't
much.
been done in a long time, apparently.
This will help.
And I do want to just step back a little bit on the history, because I think we understand that the girls softball and Western Hills Little League is all volunteers, and I think the intention was to try to bring up the quality of all of the fields up there by bringing it back to the city, and so
Yeah.
that's why their payments
Yes.
changed, so that instead of
Yes.
that we could take a more long range look at it. And so in my mind, and again, this is just my mind, but my interpretation was more like that, yes, the city would take care of all the grass, but things like lips, pitcher's mounds, dirt,
Things
things
specific
specific
to
to
the
Their
sport
activity.
was more like what Western Hills Little League and the girls softball program would be more involved in and helping with. And lips are something that you have to do probably, every 3 or 4 years, depending on how good you are at dragging. And so, you should just expect that hopefully that those lips will get done, and it won't be a problem in the future. But I definitely think that one scary part about using the pre-emergence is a lot of what you see up there is a weed.
Right.
And so if
Yes,
we were
we'll
to
kill it.
kill everything
be
up
dirt.
there, it
Yeah.
would just be all dirt. And so we're just gonna have to take a measured approach over the next few years and figure out. And again, we had this conversation, I feel like a year or two ago,
Yes.
about like, is there a situation where, like for 3, 4, and 5, which basically has been ignored for 20 years, is doing something where we get everyone involved and say, you know, the city puts in their piece, you know, Western Hills puts in something, you know, and we look for people who use the park and want to donate in that area
And then
to
We can
sharing
figure
it.
that out, but I think if we start trying to figure out who's gonna pay for stuff at the beginning of the conversation before we decide what needs to be done and what it's gonna cost, then it just
Yeah.
shuts
It fizzles,
down.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I guess along these same lines is who is responsible from the city side for holding the yearly maintenance that softball and Little League put in accountable to the lease? That was worded really weirdly, but
I understand.
who is working with the lease and our vendors to make sure all of that is flowing the way it should and those things are getting done? Because I've been on Park Commission for several years now, and I've lived here for 21 years. I don't know that there's ever been a good checks and balances system with whatever lease is in place.
I understand, and I mean, we were really starting from real basics, like how often is the water being run?
Yeah.
And, you know, apparently it wasn't run a year ago for a lot. And it's a little bit easier for me to be critical about it because everybody we have here is new. And, you know, and I didn't deal with the old administration on it. So the new administration, I can tell you, is on top of it and gets it. And I'm, from council's perspective, that's one reason I wanted to be on liaison to Park Commission is I'm dealing with those issues. And Phil McDuffie's helping me too. I mean, Phil and I talk a lot because you
Where's
can always
Alec?
talk to one council person. I don't know where he is right now, or where he is on that, because under our open meetings rules, I can only talk to one other council
where is he?
person.
No, I
Relation to
mean,
being
like,
liaison.
where is he as our liaison?
I
But he
don't.
just doesn't
He
attend the
just he's
meetings.
supposed to be here sometime, but maybe couldn't do it today. I don't know. I didn't hear.
Well, I just meant like you and Phil and not you and Alec. That's what I didn't understand. But
Well,
I'm
I'm
really
happy to-
talking about just holding the lease accountable. Because I know there's been
I
things over
understand.
the years with we didn't have sprinklers running. We didn't
Right.
have different things going on.
So we started looking at the lease together. I think that has to be a bilateral thing because, you know, you can't just look on one side of a two-party contract and sit there and say what you think. And so we're trying to work through some of those issues and even maybe change some. As Chad said, they would rather maintain the dirt in the infield because they want to maintain the sod in the infield. If their contractor installs it, they want to maintain it, maybe, so that they can have accountability at least while it gets established. As far as the mutual accountability, you know, there's so much ambiguity in all of that. One of the questions is, you know, you're talking about maintenance. Well, what does that require us to fertilize and water the field? Is that part of maintenance? Certainly we're mowing it. Now we're trying to step up our maintenance quite a bit, okay? But there's also capital improvement requirements in the
Yes.
lease. And the capital improvement requirements, you know, you could say, for example, you mentioned that the dirt work needs to be done with the lips every 3 to 5 years. Is that maintenance? Is that a capital improvement? You know, that's not clear. And also, the way that there's a couple of contradictory paragraphs in that lease about maintenance and capital improvements. And so, you know, I think there's a time for accountability with all of that and a time to resolve some of those ambiguities. But I think that the first step is, again, it kind of goes back to the idea of, are we going to start talking about who's going to pay for stuff before we figure out what needs to be done and how we're going to do it? I think it's better to go ahead and work together to figure out what we really want to accomplish there, what we need to do. Then we can look at the lease and see under the lease who should be responsible for what, who can do what, because it is a public interest situation. It's not like a commercial deal where I'm, you know, dealing with the two sides of a strictly mercantile commercial program. This is something where we have a common interest, where we're trying to make a community benefit for the benefit of a bunch of kids in the community and the citizens who live here. And so it's a little more of a cooperative approach. and there may be money that comes from other sources. I'm also liaison to RCDC, and one of the reasons I am is because I know they can spend money on the park, and I'm interested in that. So, you know, they have a fairly good revenue stream, and I think, you know, there's a lot of discussion and debate about what they can spend money on. I haven't brought that up to them yet, but again, that's why I want to defer some of this stuff until we really have a overall strategy for the next year, what we want to do to fix this, what it's going to cost. Then we sit down and figure out what our mutual roles in it under the lease and what we need to do to fix that lease, if anything, or at least operate under it
Sure.
in a way that we can function, have a functional agreement. But I think there's just been, you know, too many times in the past that as issues have come up that they've just turned into arguments
Yes.
and division and conflict and who, you know, is responsible for what and why, you know, well, who won't let us do this or that. Instead, you know, we're just trying to approach it as and Chad and I have had a good approach together, I think, on approaching it as a, you know, what can we do to fix the problems?
Yes.
And, you know, the paperwork, we're both lawyers, and I can tell you,
Why isn't the city lawyer able to clarify any ambiguities?
you know, as a lawyer, I'll tell you something I believe about contracts. When you're dealing with good people that have goodwill, it doesn't really matter what's in the contract. You're going to figure it out and work it out and do what's right. And if you're dealing with bad people who have bad intentions, then it really doesn't matter what's in the contract, because they're going to end up, you know, mistreating you anyway. It's just the way it is. And so I think you just
Very
have to approach, and a lot of these things, a lot of people get the idea that law is black and white, and it's just not. So, you know, anytime you ask a lawyer a question, the answer is always the same. They always say the exact same thing. They say, it depends. And then they start answering the question. And so, you know, there are some things in there that are fairly clear. I mean, I don't want to overstate the ambiguities, because it's not that bad. I mean, we are doing maintenance, and we're doing a better job at doing maintenance now than we have been. And I think that's going to go a long way. But there's issues, like you said, when we do pre-emergent, we're not killing weeds, to just clarify. We're just keeping them from coming back. And we may have to do some overseeding with some manual rye, or some, you know, something that won't be a persistent problem, something that's not
Can't do
perennial.
pre-emergence though and do that. That's the problem.
Well, you can, but you just have to time it correctly. Yes. And I've done a lot of this kind of work. I built a park very much like Rollingwood Park. I built a subdivision very much like the community of Rollingwood out in West Texas, and we had a 7-acre park with ball fields, a swimming pool, tennis courts, and I built all of it myself. And, you know, I do multifamily projects at, you know, 600 units of apartments in Lubbock with a lot of green spaces and you know, a lot of turf maintenance, more grass than we have here. And so I know how to do that stuff. And Izzy's on it too. He knows what he's doing, and the city administration understands it and is on board. You know, even just the maintenance, the fertilizer and the pre-emergent, to me, that's a dramatic, basic thing, that and water. When you start with there, like for example, we do that, and we may be able to do, we're talking about 2 pre-emergent applications, one essentially now, and then one at some point in the fall, but we could do, you know, and may end up doing some, because it's super cheap and effective, some Bermuda grass seeding this summer, like in the first week of June when it gets hot enough for that grass to germinate, and we could get some grass going there. And, you know, even if we do soil amendments in the fall, they're talking about top dressing that field with maybe an inch of product. That's not going to kill the Bermuda, you can't kill Bermuda grass. So if we're talking about Bermuda grass, you know, there's a lot of, that's tough. I mean, when you start watering and fertilizing Bermuda grass, you might think there's none out there, and it might just really go crazy and fill in. I'm concerned about the sticker grass, and I'm concerned about the quality of the topsoil. I'm concerned about the drainage too, with a little bit of grading that needs to be done. So there's, you know, but it's just going to take a little bit of time. And there are cheap solutions. I mean, we could do it with seed, and we don't have to go look for a ton of money. it'd be nice if we could get some sod. It's just so much nicer, you know.
Yep.
Everybody would be happy to see, it's like instant grass, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
But, I do, Nicole, or not Nicole, Lori, I do think if we could have some agreement about, writing down, like, here's what's expected of Western Hills Little League, and then honestly, it could just be at every quarter, we just get an update, like to me, it should come just with like our, budget
Monthly
update.
Yeah, that's what I
It
was
should just
asking,
say,
because it's
this
never,
is what,
it's never
yeah.
been it's,
yeah.
we never have any, I don't feel like, insight into whatever the capital funds are each year that are going into the park. I haven't heard those updates in a really long
And
time.
they haven't been executed in the way that the contract provides. So the contract provides that those capital improvements are supposed to be submitted to city council for approval before they're done. That's never happened. Some of the capital improvements, like for example, there was some fence work
Yes.
that was contemplated. I think there was some fencings addressed in the contract in one way, but then there was a bunch of money spent on the fence, and then there was a suggestion that maybe city council approved us spending capital improvements on the fence, but it wasn't done formally, and so we're gonna try to fix some of that,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of retroactive analysis that needs to be done, and we wanted to get past this one issue of let's get the infill dirt
Mhm.
work done and the sod approved, because we ran into a wall, and I was part of the wall on artificial turf because I didn't like it. But, that doesn't mean we can't find something to do positive. We wanted to get past that, and we agreed to meet again in February and start
Mhm.
working on those contract issues and on the capital improvement issues and starting to develop the plan for maintenance. And so we'll do all of that, and Chad and I are both understand that those are issues that need to be addressed and that they haven't been managed appropriately in the past, and we intend to manage them together. So, but it'll take us just a little time.
So as a council member, do you recommend that a whole plan be put together with some ideas for funding before it goes to council?
Yeah, I do. I mean, and I'm just the way, and I'm learning because I'm sorry. I'm learning a little bit more about sort of how government works versus how everything else works, because I'm more accustomed to just doing stuff that needs to be done and making it happen, and I realize that approach isn't necessarily translatable to public service. So, but I'm because it requires consensus and all of that. But even so, I think that it's better to develop a plan and have an idea and options of what things will cost before we necessarily try to get consensus on it. Frankly, even the issue with fertilizer and pre-emergence, I didn't even want to talk about it, because to me it's just normal stuff, and it's like, why do we have to have a big discussion about it? It's like very normal stuff, that is expected in my mind for maintenance. So let's just do it, and the city staff agreed. So I think some things can be done administratively. Like, for example, if we're just talking about throwing a bunch of grass seed out there this summer, we don't need to have a big discussion about that. And there might be little things that we can do. But if you get into bigger things like the soil amendments and it's talking about money, well, yeah, we better have a price, a plan, then we're going to have to start a little bit of a public discussion and such and get council approval. We're talking about real money. We get into council approval stuff. If we can do stuff cheap, like the whole fertilizer and pre-emergent program, it's about $1,500 a year. That's well within current, maintenance budgets, and so it's not something we have to make a big deal out of.
So it sounds like you're still kind of formulating which direction to go as far as just what level to bring the fields up to.
Yeah, because like I would want to have a budget we're going to need so like the folks who are doing the work for Western Hills Little League, I've talked to them.
KMI.
And we were going to meet out at the fields, and then over the holidays they haven't been available. But they said, I've told them we want a proposal from them for the whole park deal and see what they spec out and propose. And then I want to take that and compare it to, say, what proposal we get from John Deere Landscape Supply, and also talk to, Izzy in the city about, well, what part can we do in that? Like, because the other thing is, when I talked to Whittlesey about getting the soil amendments, I was like, well, how do we spread it? And they say, well, we're looking at buying a spreader, but we don't have one yet. But all the golf courses have one because they all use that, and you could borrow one from a golf course. So I was like, okay, well, that's a little more than I'm personally, willing to go shopping around. But I do actually have lots of farm equipment. I ranch. I maintained a 15-acre polo field at my house for 15 years for the Texas Tech Polo Club, and I had gang reel mowers, and I would get fertilizer delivered in 1-ton buggies, and so I do some of this stuff and know how to do some of it. Izzy knows some of this stuff, but it's going to have to be a balance. We're going to have to figure out, once we get a proposal from these guys, I don't know what they call it.
KMI?
Yeah, their business, and then maybe start looking at, well, how else could we do it too? Could we get them to do some of it? Can we do some of it ourselves? What would sod cost to do? We did some measurement and calculations of the area to get the soil amendments. I figured were about, and I did just a real rough calculation. I think it was $30,000 or something for the product we were looking at. I don't remember, but it's
That
going
would be to resod everything?
No, that's just for the soil amendment.
For the soil amendment.
Yeah,
Okay.
to put an inch of that stuff out there. And resodding, I have no idea what that's would cost at this point, but I would think it might be super expensive. It all depends. Like if we're gonna, we might end up spending $50,000. We might end up spending $250,000 and to fix these fields, and it somewhat depends on, like, if we get a proposal for sod, which I think would be fantastic if we could do it, and the whole thing's going to be, let's say, $100,000 for sod. Well, that's not going to be doable unless we can find the money somewhere. And so then at that point, I think we go to RCDC and say, hey, will y'all spend $100,000 on sod, or which they can, and they have the money. Or maybe we get some private donations to raise that. Let's raise $100,000. I bet we could, maybe. I don't know. Maybe we raise half of it and somebody, RCDC gives half. Maybe Western Hills Little League or, one of the other philanthropic baseball organizations pitches in a certain amount of it. But again, to me, we got to have a plan, a price. Then we go to that process. And we'll have some options, certainly the big option is going to be sod versus no sod. I think we really have to do some soil amendments and some gradings, but even that, do we use like this fancy product that they have that's got charcoal and sand in it and stuff that the golf courses use, or do we get like some bulk organic and sand material delivered out here, mix it ourselves and get somebody out here with a tandem disc plow behind a little Kubota and put it in ourselves and then grade it. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do that. So
Citizens with rakes.
it might come to that. But really, I think the thing is, it's got to be done. It's got to be done right. It's got to be done professionally. And I think we have to just. There's a fair amount of research to come up with exactly what the products options are, what the cost options are, and fortunately we got a little bit of time, because I think the ideal time to do this is essentially September. Do some of the dirt work in August, put the grass down in September. Even if you're going to seed it, seeding it you'd probably want to do earlier for the heat and the growing season, but we've got to also work around all the kids' playing seasons. So, and we don't want to make a mess, that wipes out a season. So that's why I think sod would be so much more attractive.
Be ideal.
So, anyway, I hope that answers. Sorry, there's a lot of unanswered questions at this point, but we're just beginning the process, and it's just going to take time. So.
Awesome. Anything else, Steve? Okay.
What this season?
Oh, I do want one more thing. I just think, I want everyone to get along, and I do think one way to improve that is if we could put some signage up, even just for the next couple of weeks of, hey, girls softball, boys, Western Hills Little League is getting ready to start practices. Please remember that they have,
First
a
strike.
Yeah, I
first
think
right
that'd be
of,
great.
Even if it's just like 5, what do you call it, laminated sheets that just say Western Hills Little League girls softball starting practices
Can we send it out
this
through the
week.
Swift system, like we've been doing with
Yeah.
emergency things, just to be
Yeah.
dotting our i's and crossing our t's? I mean, I don't know,
Yeah.
do people get tired of having those come through? Or even a notification?
I think a sign's a good idea. I walked the whole park looking at that issue. We walked around looking for signs and such, and there is a sign over on the, I guess it's the west side of the park, over by the batting cages. There's not a sign on the east side that I could tell that says that. I think one thing that's important is, and you know, I'm a dog guy. I take my dog up there, but I think it's important to communicate to the people that do bring their dogs up there clearly on the sign that when the kids are having an organized baseball activity, that no dogs are allowed on the field at all, and that it's a black and white rule. And it says that, you know, one problem is you start trying to communicate too much stuff on signs, and you know, the trying to do too many things. It's a problem, but I think that would be a good thing to put, especially right there at the gate
Yeah.
where you walk
Right on
in.
the east side would be
Right
the
there
ideal
where
spot.
they walk in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, let's get it done. Who does it? Does the city already have the template for that? Do we just copy what's on the west side? How do we get it done in time for their season to begin?
Ashley?
We'll make some signs up. I'm guessing those were Vicky's, so I think we'll have to start fresh and find a new sign, but we can make those up.
Perfect. Great, thank
Great.
you.
Yep.
Can we include the QR thing?
Well, not if it doesn't go somewhere.
Well, that had to do with leasing. That had to do with leasing too, and I thought it was a little awkward, but
Leasing what?
the leasing
Oh,
the
you mean renting
facilities,
out the-
renting
Oh, yeah.
facilities. It's like to rent, scan this code, but you know, I think, and also there was something about a phone number to call for information. I think was on there. Okay, I would just keep it. My suggestion: keep it as simple
I
as
would too.
possible.
Yep.
Short, simple, to the point.
Agreed.
Don't take your dogs on the field while the kids are playing baseball.
This has been this has been a recurring problem year after year. So I'd like a sign that speaks just to this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it would be important.
Yeah.
But I meant as far as like access to a schedule would be really good, so people just know. don't
Yeah,
show
that's a
up.
good idea, and I think to the extent we could put a schedule up there, it'd be good, even if it was just a laminated piece of, you know, paper that you stick up there on the with a zip tie to the fence. I don't, you know, whatever you can do would be helpful. And I bet if you get the schedule information to Ashley, we could get something stuck up there, like.
Again, though, schedule subject to
Change.
changes, because we
Change,
know a rainout happens on Tuesday.
Yeah, and I think
things move
only
to
the
Wednesday.
real thing is the black and white rule
Yeah.
of no dogs on the field while the kids are having
And
organized
don't take them to
sports.
fields one
Right.
No
or
what?
two.
What's that?
Like, if nobody's on one, you can't take your dogs from 3, 4, 5 to go to one, right?
Well, we're not putting that on a sign, and I'm not sure what the rule is, but I think
let's keep it. I think we
It's
need to
just
keep
simple.
this sign simple.
it's very
If there's
short,
children
simple.
on the field.
Here's my problem: is that when I'm out there with my dog, if I go out there with my dog, and the kids are playing, and somebody else walks out there with their dog, and I tell them, "Oh, you can't be out there with your dog while the kids are playing," they're gonna look around like, "Well, there's no sign that says that." So
Mhm.
It's like, and then I gotta.
No, it'd be
argue.
nice to be able to
Yeah.
point
Then
to
I
something.
gotta argue with them.
just
I don't
say-
want
I
to do
know.
that.
I agree.
You know,
Yep,
it's just like.
yep,
Thank you.
And this is that time of the year
It
when
is.
when we
yeah,
start introducing baseball and softball, and we get the conflicts. So
yeah.
that'd be great. Sign. All right, you ready to move on to agenda item number 5? Discussion and possible action on a review of adult fitness rates since the rate change.
Can you speak to how this made its way to the agenda? So when the city council approved the rate change back in October, I believe was when they took effect, they were going to give them 3 months to work out and bring it back to their January meeting because Park Commission didn't meet in January, they didn't want to have that until after Park Commission had a chance to talk about it. So it is on your agenda here today to discuss and review, and it will be on City Council's agenda on Wednesday of next week to take a look at. So
no action on our part.
I think, possibly a recommendation to council. They will have it on there and also be reviewing it. So if there's anything the Park Commission wants them to know as they're reviewing those rates, this would be a good chance to talk about it.
How many adult vendors do we have right now?
I believe we just have, Michaela, you may need to help me, 3?
So, we have Ignite, we have I-9 periodically, well, that's not.
Yeah, they're not an adult vendor. I think it's just,
Or Gene Smithson, so.
okay, so currently it's just Ignite and the Tai Chi group, Gene Smithson's group that meets up there. We have Ignite that does the periodic on the field.
So a little backdrop on this, after the November meeting, and I was hoping Alec would be here because I do not like to speak for people when they're not present. I don't feel that that's my right to speak on somebody else's behalf. All I can do is share with you what transpired after the November meeting when the city council approved a review in January with the proposed rate schedule based off of the grid or the tier that was approved through here and then went to city council. So when that meeting happened, Councilmember Robinson called me and he left me a voice message and he said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about the rate schedule that we are now reviewing in January. And I said, you bet, because whatever, I'm all ears. What would you like to discuss? And so myself, Miss Councilmember Robinson, Ashley, Michaela, and Desiree, we all met here to discuss December 2nd what this looks like. How does this impact if this is approved for an adult fitness class that does not use field space? Because I believe the way that it was proposed and passed, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that this tier schedule would be adopted for adult fitness classes only that do not use a field space. Are we all in agreement on that? Again, just from the best of our recollection. And please, it's been many months, unfortunately, with being able to talk about this again. And so, with that, we had this conversation, and I believe it's an attachment in our packet here, about breaking down the tier structure of what that would look like with the vendors that had come into the city to rent at one point or another, and who we currently have. And so if you open up the attachment, you'll see that this is how each vendor would be affected by the tier structure that was adopted for review back this past January, which is now suspended or postponed. So looking at Beat Fitness, who was here, they would have to pay $25 an hour because they prefer to exercise on the field versus in the field house space. Okay? And if you use the tier structure that was adopted, their hourly rate would be $10 an hour. So again, trying to look at who had come through the city, where they were exercising, and what that tier structure would do to their hourly rate. And then Kinder Hart was also a vendor of ours, and the way she would fall into the tier structure is that she would be charged $12.50 per hour based on her usage, the number of attendees. So those are adult fitness groups, but they use the field, okay? So then if you look at the adult fitness non-field vendors, we have Tai Chi and we have Ignite. And so based off of their hours and their number of attendees, according to the tier structure, Tai Chi would fall into $13.20 an hour, and Ignite would fall into $4.50 an hour. So you see how the tier structure would directly impact each one of these groups based on if they're non-field use or their field use. And then you look at, so you've got that adult fitness group. Now you look at youth fitness field vendors.
which we have Western Hills Little League, and we have I-9. And I-9 is either paying $25 an hour or $75 an hour based on which field they use. And they don't fall into the tier structure because they don't fall into that grid. So you also have Life Keto, who was not an adult fitness vendor, but they use the grass area. And so he would be charged, according to this, $25 an hour because he's not an adult fitness group. It's because it was specific to adult fitness only. So he's a youth group. So you can see it's very complex and trying to find the one size fits all based on past vendors who've come through, current vendors, and potential vendors. And his tier structure, if he were accepted into that as a youth fitness, would be $11.75 per hour. So you have 6 different, 6 different vendors, all shapes and sizes, all different hourly rates based on the tier structure, and some are excluded because they're youth fitness, they're not adult fitness. So this was the whole point, I believe, in trying to simplify what we charge and what is fair and reasonable. So all I did was present the facts during this meeting, and I was given the direction to go ahead and present the facts in paper, which is what I did. This is not a Nicole Marisi agenda item. This is not a Melissa Morrow agenda item. This is not, I did not want this at all. Like, this is not the point of it. I wanted Councilmember Robinson to be here today to speak on this, to bring it up, because it's his agenda item that he has to take to council, and maybe now it's Councilmember Glasheen because you're here. I don't know, right?
I have ADD. I couldn't follow all of it.
Okay. So after we met with that meeting, we have also understood that Jean, who is the Tai Chi owner, had said, listen, I want to comply with the city, but I can't afford the $25 an hour per rate, which we understood, and we said, okay, well, what would his fee be if he were to fall into this tier structure? And that's where it was the $13.20 an hour. And he said that, again, not speaking on behalf of the city, but what was communicated during that meeting is that that's a reasonable amount that he could, and there was a letter I have, and I'm happy to pass it around, we discussed during that meeting. So then I said, how about I reach out to Beat Fitness as well as Life Keto and ask them if the park commission is considering reevaluating our rental rate per hour. And you can see there's emails in here that conversation happened via email thread of, would $15 an hour seem reasonable? And both of them, again, I'm not speaking on behalf of them, but it's in black and white, but to summarize it, said, absolutely, if there's a need to come back and rent, that's a very reasonable amount of money. Jennifer Wooten, who's Beat Fitness, said, that's great, but I really love where I'm at right now. I'm indoor fitness and I'm paying $30 an hour. So I want to say that it's not about the money issue of what the rental rate went to, because these folks have found a home that they're paying as much, if not more, to host their businesses and their classes. So it's not, maybe initially it was a big increase in the rental rate, which has caused them to leave. But fast forward over time and reevaluating, that's no longer their reason for not being here in the city. So then, what does that mean?
Excuse me, can I speak to that point real quick?
Yes.
Maybe, but maybe not. To me, it's sort of an apples and oranges thing. I mean, being able to work out outside versus inside. I mean, I've had to change facilities where I work out, and I could get very comfortable in a new facility, and I wouldn't be willing maybe to go back to the other one, even if the new facility cost more, but would I have preferred to not have left? And so, yeah, maybe the money doesn't seem like the issue, but
So I gotta run.
I don't know that you can say that was never the issue.
I didn't say that it was never the issue. That might have been the initial reason why they chose not to rent from us.
Thank you, Kevin.
But now we fast forward and have re-engaged in conversation with them. That's no longer the issue. The money is no longer the issue of reason why they're not here operating today. They're happy with where they're at, and if there's a need to come back, they said, yes, that seems like a reasonable amount
Okay.
that we could support. That's truly what, if the initial reason for them to leave was the $25 per hour, they're now, fast forward a year down the road, saying, that's no longer the reason to keep me out of, if the city were to adopt the 50. So again,
You
the
mean
big-
with the lower rate?
correct, with the
Yeah,
lower rate.
with
So
the lower rate.
the discrepancy here is that looking at that tier structure doesn't seem to make reasonable sense for all different types of groups that come in to use the park.
It's too complicated.
And it's not fair and equitable, because you're charging one group $5 an hour, and you're charging another group up to $13 an hour, and then you're restricting that group to have the tier structure because they're using a field, and then you're restricting another group from using that tier structure because they're not adult fitness. So you have, again, it's never meant to be contentious, it's just what is the most simple, fair and equitable, inclusive rate structure that could be applied simply from one group to the next, regardless of if they're in adult fitness, a youth fitness, on the field, or off the field. Does that make sense?
Well, except that all those things are different, you know, I mean, if you have 100 campers on a field is different than having 10 people on concrete that you don't have to maintain, and you don't have to have all that. And also, like, the hours that people come in is different, like, because there's definitely peak hours. I know at Wayat, like, there's peak hours where between 5 and 8 p.m., boy, everybody wants that space. And so you do have peak times where people want to use it. It's
Well, you have
also,
so you look at-
and
Yeah.
one thing that I think maybe we should go back to is, what is our goal? Do we want adult fitness? Do we want kids programs in the
Yes.
park? Do we?
I would
So,
think.
no, I know, but I'm just asking, like, because we do know that we have fewer. Once we introduce the higher rate, we now have fewer. It doesn't matter that some people are saying, well, that doesn't matter now. That's not why we're not still there. We know that we have fewer people who are doing adult programs here than we did when we put in the higher rate structure. And so, and if we want to get rid of adult programs,
No.
that's a great way to do it. But if we don't want to get rid of adult programs, then I guess we need to look at what makes it, what would make adult programs come, and even like what kinds would we want, you know? Because right now, I look at the park, and I love our park. I think it's amazing, but it's very kid-centric in terms of the ball fields, the programming, the partners that we have, the playgrounds that we have, which is awesome. That's great. But we also have a lot of adults in our community, and I want to make sure that we're balancing, you know, being inviting for all ages and all groups, and that goes to the, and I know the Life Keto one is kind of complicated because Life Keto has a kid program that was here.
Right.
Gene works for Life Keto, but was running a Tai Chi program on his own. But anyway, and the other part, when we started talking about this, also was about what is the pressure on our staff. Because, for instance, when you have schedules that change all the time, or you have camps that come up, and so for this week it's this, and we have to put up this signage, and we have to, it takes the staff a lot more time than if you have, you know, like a Tai Chi class, which is every Friday at 8 o'clock. He can set that for the whole year and literally talk to the staff person one time, and then that's it.
And he's being charged $13.20 an hour based off of his 2 hours a week, 12 to 14 attendees.
Right. And so
So-
let's take Ignite, for example, if you want to put it, you know, compare those two. So again, the staff only has to deal with Ignite one time. She gives them the schedule, and they only have to deal with him one time.
Right.
One of the reasons we came up with that was because there are other organizations where it's more based on how much time does it take the staff to deal with it than the actual hours. We're not necessarily doing it hour for hour. And that's, and again, I'm not opposed at all to us looking at another model. We were just trying to get to a model that didn't drive away our very last adult fitness group. So I do think we've improved in that we haven't lost our last two. So we're going in the right direction. Do I think that means we should change it for the fields and for the youth stuff? I don't think we've lost any of our youth programs.
No, and
So-
there wasn't a suggestion to make
Yeah.
a change for the field space, with the exception of, and we can talk about that later on. But with fields 1 and 2, keeping it $25 an hour, absolutely staying with that, because there is more maintenance involved with that versus if you're in a small spot at the grass area or the field house or the lower park or the upper park if you want to be by the butterfly garden. So there's definitely more maintenance related to the field space usage. But this was just truly looking at if you're adult fitness and you're not in a field, right now the way the tier structure is set, it is not equitable for those groups which come in with a set schedule, which aren't changing from day to day or week to week based on if their campers can make the class or not. And so that's truly when you dissect it based off of what we are servicing and who we're servicing, this is where the discrepancy is. It ranges from $4.50 an hour to $13.20 an hour. And
So let me make sure I have this right. So you're thinking maybe we should simplify this somehow.
yes,
Do you have suggestions on how to simplify it?
Well, I mean, if you wanna go to $5 an hour for everybody, I guess we could do that,
If they're not on the field,
if they're not on a field, yeah.
I say I make a motion, never mind, is it too soon to make a motion?
I think so.
Yeah, let's,
Okay.
let's keep
I-
talking.
I
Question about-
think
Yeah,
that
yeah.
sounds good.
Yeah,
These,
Well, when you were, I'm sorry,
go ahead.
when you were talking and kind of getting approval, I saw $15 in those emails.
yes ma'am.
So is that what you're saying, is that 15 seems equitable
Yes.
to people that were here or not here now, but would come back at $15?
no, they did not say they would come back. at
Yes, they
50.
did,
If
it's
they
in the
needed to.
emails.
They
I
said
like
they
it.
thought it was reasonable, but they said they weren't going to be coming back. So to me, someone saying it's reasonable, but no, I'm not coming back to rent it you,
That's
they
not
didn't
what I
really
heard
put their
her
money.
say,
No, I know, but that's what it says in their emails.
It
If you
says
read
if
the
there's a
emails.
demand for outdoor training, we will definitely rent the
Yeah.
space again.
Cause part of it
That
is
to me is
COVID.
pretty
Yeah.
concrete
Clear.
to
Well,
say,
I know, and that's about COVID. I mean, honestly, this happened, those people moved a lot of their outdoor classes that went away, also went away because of COVID.
Yeah, I understand that, but never mind. But what I did understand was that maybe there was a personal conversation where if they were to come back, they would pay that.
it's an
Which-
email, it's in the
Yeah,
packet.
I read that
So
with
that's
Jonathan, but he's always, he'd prefer to be indoors.
correct. And Jennifer Wooten said the same thing.
Okay.
So so what she's, and again, I'm not putting words in people's mouths. It says, this new proposed fee arrangement is certainly something I would consider should the need arise in the future and would make the move back to the park much more attractive.
Mm-hmm.
So
And was she on a field or was she?
she was on a field.
Okay.
So she would have had to pay the $25 an hour by staying on the field.
But she felt 15 on a field would be fine.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
I think $5 for whatever it is too low.
And then I don't wanna,
agree.
I believe we have
Way
I
too
don't like
low
to
for
speak-
anybody.
Well, I don't wanna speak on behalf, again, this is coming back from the city council meeting, I believe we have Ms. Springerman here, she can, and we can pull up the recording, but I recall her saying that $5 an hour is too low.
It is.
And that,
Sure.
those were her words, but
Yeah.
again, she's here to speak on
Yeah.
her behalf, so this is where, after looking at the tier structure, looking at the who was and the who wasn't, and the folks that came through, the $15 an hour, which is still significantly lower than any competitive Leander, like Travis, Keen's ISD.
So I want to argue with that a little bit also, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but you can't rent any of those spaces during the school day.
Correct.
So
Well, you
it's
can
not
the
really,
parks. You can
and
Leander,
someone in
Cedar
Rolling,
Park. You can't do Eaton's ISD or
Rollingwood
Lake Travis.
residents are not going to drive to Leander to go do an exercise. I mean, maybe some of you all do want to, but I don't want to drive to Leander to go do an exercise. So if I'm going to compare apples to apples, what we were comparing it to was City of Austin, which we were still above what theirs was.
At $5 an hour?
At $5 an hour.
Well, I
Well,
think-
using their, and that's where, and Don, I'm sure Don is trying to do these calculations right now, because he's the one who
Trying.
brought that new tier structure to try to keep it simple and be more based on who our real competitor is, which would be, Austin Parks
Can we
and
use that
Rec.
also when we're talking about planning and zoning and setbacks? Because if we're gonna use City of Austin, then we shouldn't be
I don't
comparing
ever
ourselves to.
wanna be City of Austin.
We don't wanna compare ourselves to Aspen as they're proposing. I mean, if then to be standard across all planning and zoning and city council, if we're using City of Austin as what we're going to model ourselves off of, then we shouldn't be integrating.
Well, okay, so then who are you gonna use as a model? I guess I'm asking, show me an outdoor space you can rent during the hours that our current vendors use it, that would be a competition, because an indoor facility that's cleaned and air conditioned and heated and everything else is not the same as being outdoors in a public park.
I'm happy to table this till next meeting and get more information and bring it, or we can, is there any more discussion, I guess, that's the question, besides finding another competitive outlet nearby that would allow us to do an outdoor space, because even the owner of the institution and the business said $5 an hour is too low. $25 is too high, that chased out folks, so somewhere in the middle, is there a common ground that we could come together and agree that $15 an hour is reasonable for a youth or adult fitness class that is anywhere in our park? As long as
I
it
really
has
hope we
less
could.
than 20.
Yeah.
I would
You wanna
really
make a
like us
motion?
to
I'll
do
make
that.
a motion for 15.
But wait, now is that a motion for 15 that's for everything, for
Well,
field rentals
no.
and?
No,
Oh,
on the
okay.
field.
Is it
Okay.
15 per hour per class,
Per
regardless
class.
of the size of the
So if I have
class?
100 people, it's the same, it's $15.
We don't
an hour.
have anybody who has 100 people.
And
who's
I
not
know it's
using
Right
the
now
fields.
you don't, but we're trying to make a rule that's
So we
gonna be
limit it to
good.
20 guests.
Before you make a motion, I'm gonna throw something out here. Okay, I found the original thing that Melissa and Alex and I, was anybody else at that meeting? Worked up. And it's this one to 7 adults, 1 to 5 hours per week, $1,000 a year. So I did so say this is full, so 7 adults, 5 hours a week, that's 35 hours a week. That's I don't know what these numbers mean exactly, but when I look at, the dollars per year divided by the total hours per week, that's like 28.57. If I had more time, this would make more sense, but what it does is the groups get bigger, the prices get lower, which kind of makes sense.
Economies of
Well-
scale.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of
But
how
you're
we,
saying if we have more people, it's gonna be more wear and tear also, so.
but this is concrete and it's adults. I agree, we could probably we've got 4 tiers, we could probably get it down to 2 tiers. A lot of, we didn't pick these numbers out of the air. We met for an hour and a half or so and just chewed it up, and indeed, we want to encourage adult fitness classes in the park. And I don't feel like the money we make off of these fitness classes is make or break to the park budget. It was trying to, like this, 1 through 7 adults and 5 hours a week, $1,000 a year. That's not a lot of money if someone wants to have a small class with just a few people. So I don't know. I think it's kind of like I don't think these rates are unfair.
Well, the challenge, and sorry for the interruption, so the challenge is right now we have Jane with Tai Chi who wants to be compliant, just as Ignite wants to be compliant, right? And so based off of this tier structure, he has to pay $13.20 an hour for his 2 classes for the 3 hours a week or whenever he's here. Yet
we have a group who's using it more and paying a third of that cost. And so to me, as an outsider, as a city representative, I don't feel that that's fair and equitable for our vendors. And that's all that this is trying to do, is say, what is a reasonable hourly rate that we could, it's not an I-9 using the fields, doing their camps. It's defining that if it's an adult fitness class, if it's a youth fitness class where it's defined by Life Keto, or there's a pottery class that reached out to me and she wants to do an art shop. So if it's non-sports related, is there a way that we could come up with a reasonable hourly rate, define that so that it's fair and equitable across all of the groups that want to come in and use the space?
So one of the other thoughts that we had, part of it setting 1,000 as the very first tier was because we wanted the person, we didn't just want fly-by-nights coming in, someone who hasn't really thought about what a real class would look like. And you think this doesn't happen. At WEA, probably twice a week, I have a guy who's played basketball all his life, and he just graduated from college, and he wants to start private lessons. And so he'll come in, and this happens, I see it on our own fields here in the park all the time, where people come into the Western Hills Little League batting cages, and they're like, they basically just started their business in your park. And so part of setting, I understand why, if you only teach one class a week, that the cost ends up being more, not just because you have to have the same amount of interaction with your adult staff, but it's sort of like a hurdle that you have to get over in order for us to know you're not fly by night, you really want to be here, you're going to offer this for a long time. And so it's kind of like, we want them to invest and have more classes, because quite frankly, the people who stay around and get to know you and get to know the staff, they're more likely to sweep after their class. They're more likely to tell you when the bathrooms are messed up, or actually just go in there and clean them themselves, because they want their participants to have a good experience. And so I get it. If you only offer one class a week in our park, it's going to be more expensive. But part of it is because we've set that as a hurdle. So I wouldn't think of it so much as you broke it down as hourly rate. We talked in that initial meeting when we were trying to come up with something else is, do we have basically so you could think of it this way, there's a registration, you want to do business in the city of Rollingwood in our park, it's $500. And then maybe you have your hourly fee. But because we were trying to simplify it and not have it be where, okay, now we have to keep track of however many hours up to, we were trying to keep it to some simple tiers so that it wasn't so much bureaucracy for the staff, not so much bureaucracy for whoever is coming in to do the classes themselves. But at the same time, say, hey, you have to meet this bar to even get in here, if that makes sense. So I for sure, if you only teach one class a week here, it's gonna be too expensive probably to do here. Do we still want that class? I'm totally game for it, and if we have to figure it out a different way and come up, but again, we were trying to go to the how do we simplify it.
This rate structure does get cheaper as you get more kids more people in the class, more adults in the class. So,
All right, Lori, what was your motion exactly?
My motion was to $15 an hour for up to 20 people.
Up to 20 people if you're not using a field, right?
Correct.
Even if you are using it, well,
No.
Well, you use
Then
grass.
Beat
No one's
Fitness-
using a field, are they?
well, Beat Fitness used to, so did Kindergarten.
So adults can use
what we did
adult
was,
fitness.
this was limited to on the hard surfaces.
So that would be your Tai Chi and your Ignite,
That's what we're,
but it would exclude Life Keto and exclude Beat Fitness. If they were
What
to
was
return.
Life Keto doing? Like
Life
how,
Keto was down on
On
the
the
lower
grass.
park on the grass right by
Oh.
the pavilion.
So what are we gonna charge those people?
I just think off field, but that's my motion. My motion was off field.
Yeah.
Which
got
is
it.
fine.
you know what, you've put a motion out. Can we have discussion?
Sure.
Okay.
second, there needs to be a second.
So you
Before
made
we
the
can have
motion that-
discussion?
Yeah, so she's made a motion, just second it.
I don't think he wants to second
I
it.
don't
I
wanna
think he
second
wants
it.
to talk about it.
I will second the
can't-
motion for
There you go.
$15 an hour, non-field related adult or youth fitness
classes up to 20 participants.
Wait. I'm not sure we want to say fitness, right? Because you said pottery people and other
Okay,
stuff.
adult or youth group
Activities.
activities.
Just activities outside of the fields.
Now it's
Non-field
Yeah.
for up to 20 participants.
You're getting all this right?
Okay, so my thoughts are, I think that should go to a subcommittee and
Again?
sit down with pencil and paper and calculator.
I don't know
And
how many more weeks we
it's-
can talk about
Yeah.
it though.
Well,
3 times.
we could also just leave it like it is. It's, you know, it's,
Well, we can take a vote because we have 2 motions. So you can vote against it.
well, that's okay, but I think there's a lot of loose ends that are hard to just tie up with a motion. I mean, is it on the grass or on the hard surface? Is it adults or kids? Is
I'm
it,
saying anything that isn't on fields 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5.
Yes.
And less than 20 people.
So
Less
they
than
could
20
be on the
people.
And
grass,
less
just
than
not on the
20
field.
people.
Correct.
Yes.
so they could be on the
Yeah.
grass fields out here?
Yeah,
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
So they could have
Kinda
sporting,
liking that.
small-sided
Thank you.
sporting events there, and
I'm kinda liking it.
I think that encourages people. I think it's fair to the city and our staff. I think it's fair to our residents. I think it hits all of our bases. It's
And
just
it's
my
simple.
opinion. We have a motion and a second, and then we can take a vote.
So,
Not to take
my
your job,
question
Chad.
is,
No,
so
no, no.
what will the change in fee be for Ignite? Because since they're our only vendor at this point, what will the fee difference be? Can someone
so they're
just do that
using,
calculation?
they're doing 6 to 10 hours a week. So let's say 10 hours a week, times
So it'd be
50.
$150.
They have 8
week?
hours a week,
8 hours a week times 15.
$15 an hour.
Okay.
It's $10.50 more than what they're paying right now because they're paying $4.50 an hour if they're on that tier structure. Like if you took $15 an hour less the $4.50,
So you're saying, so they're doing 8 hours a week
So say 50
times
weeks.
$15
Mm-hmm.
that was, and this could
times
be,
52.
this could be done.
So remember, she was gonna leave when it was $8,000, and now it's gonna be $6,240. I mean, I don't know, I mean, I'm
So-
not her, it's her business, but
Yeah.
I would rather
What if
go
we
to
did a
$10 an hour. I would like to amend the motion to $10 an hour.
And Tai Chi then,
It's for everybody, it's $10 an hour.
Ignite is 10 hours a week,
She
roughly?
said 8 hours.
8
That
hours
was-
a week. Okay, so 8 hours a week times 52, 50
Considering
weeks
that
per
we're
year.
not trying to get wealthy off this and we do want everyone to exercise, $10 that's pretty good. If that makes everybody comfortable, we get everybody out exercising, I'm comfortable with $10.
Well, right now it's less than that, and we're not getting anybody else signing up for it. So, to me, it's like we shouldn't go above what it is right now.
I don't
because
think
we lose
anybody
people.
knows what anybody pays, and I
No,
think
they
if we
don't.
broadcast this out as, you know, the new rate is $10 an hour or $15 an hour, that we'll get some interest, because that's dirt cheap to be able to have a class in the parks. So I think we would benefit from having some clarity out there and something we could post, so that the people we don't know could be interested.
I think we're both on board for the clarity and being able to post something. We're just trying to figure out a fee that everybody can afford.
Yeah, and I think it needs to be simple and across the board for
Is
anything.
$10 an hour, do you think that that's too little?
it's probably in thin ice in my viewpoint, but
It's probably what?
thin ice in my viewpoint. But I want to get along and I want to be agreeable and I want to put closure to this once and for all with finality and be able to speak in front of council to say we really all cohesively came together collectively on this point and please respect us. I know they don't have to take our recommendations and they often overturn things that we bring to them, but I think it would really make tremendous impact to show that we, the seven of us, were able to collectively come to an agreement without having to break into a third subcommittee and to speak with conviction that council, we are asking for your support in this. So if that's the $10 an hour mark, I'm fine with that. I don't agree with it, but I want to move forward and I want to have that kind of cohesion within our group to be able to bring it to council.
you know, it's like the lowest rate is 1 to 7 adults in the class. The highest rate is 8 to 20 adults in the class. So,
We have 9 minutes before our session's supposed to end, so I do want to.
yeah, I'd like to see this, somebody sit down with a pencil, paper, calculator and look at how it shakes down. That's my thoughts. I'm not opposed to changing the
Sure.
rates, but it's,
Well,
you know,
We've got a couple other items we want to hit here, so I'd just assume we vote on whatever.
So
whatever the
again, I
consensus.
made an amendment for it to be $10. Does anybody second the amendment?
I second the amendment, because I want to get along and I want to move forward and I want to be able to have this be an open space for all people to be treated equally and equitably.
but it doesn't. It says if you
I
got
second
7
the
people
motion.
in your group,
Up
you
to 20
pay the
people.
same as 20 people.
Absolutely.
I like that it's
If you
a
have
round
one
number.
person in
Okay,
your group,
let's-
you pay the same as 20.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so you,
All right.
parliamentary wise, you'll vote on the amendment first,
Okay.
and then you vote on the, motion as amended, depending on if the amendment passes or not.
I don't know what that.
I'll help you here.
Yeah,
So-
help me.
Okay,
I would
so-
like to vote on the amendment.
All in favor of the amendment?
All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed, say nay.
nay.
Nay. So that passes.
Yep.
Do we still have to vote on the other
So
one?
the motion as amended now says $10 for
Yeah.
all of those things. So, yes, you have to vote on that one. The
The-
motion as amended, now you vote on the motion as
Vote
amended.
on the. Let's vote on the motion as amended.
Could we restate the motion?
Let's.
That
Yeah,
all
let's
adult
get
and
Nicole to
youth,
do it.
This is why I,
Nicole, go
Yeah.
for it.
adult and youth activities,
Ooh, good.
not on a field, up to 20 participants will be charged $10 per hour.
Aye.
Yep.
I'll second that.
Everybody in favor,
It's
say
already-
aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
nay.
Nay.
Okay.
All right. So that passes. Do we have to
Not
vote
trying
on
to be
anything else?
difficult,
No,
just,
so that's a recommendation to city council.
Yeah, yeah,
and
that's
then-
all it is.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
There's one last component of this.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
sorry. We can sidebar this for later because I know we're short on time. So the last look at the rental rate, and this is not a contentious conversation. It is looking at facts right here. So field sizes for fields 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5. Field 1 acreage is 0.76 acres. Field 2 acres is 0.66, and fields 3, 4, and 5 is 0.97 acres. So it's a
we've got
third.
7.7, 0.6, and almost an acre.
Correct.
Mhm.
So we have about a 25% increase between field 3, 4, and 5 and field 1. You go from 76.76 of an acre to 0.97. So you're almost, are we agreeable on that, just for
Yes.
round numbers?
Yes.
Sure.
25% larger. Right now, we're charging 3 times the amount of rental rate for 3, 4, and 5.
because
Yeah.
we rented it as 3 fields.
Correct.
So why don't we just do 25 and 50?
That is a wonderful recommendation.
That's my motion.
All right. Do we have a second?
I have I second that. We will rent
So
3,
the-
4, and 5 for $50 an hour.
So the only
Discussion?
discussion is, so do we still have a, before, your field didn't it have a maximum number of people you could have on it?
It,
Cause I think each field gets, I don't know, 50 people or something like that, like if you're doing a camp or whatever. I just wouldn't wanna see us putting a camp with, if 50 is the maximum on a field, I wouldn't want us to see put us 150 kids on that field.
if we could just
Makes
take the
sense.
average of I-9s, because they're the only ones who are the large group that use that. If
Yeah.
we could take the average of what their participation class is and say it will not exceed that amount of money, or that amount of
People.
participants. So if they have 50 people that come in a summer week program, and if they have 42 the next week and they have 60 the next week, then take the average of those 3 weeks, and we wouldn't want to, again, to restrict them from being able to use it if they have one participant over what
Yeah.
the maximum is. But I don't want lacrosse groups in there coming with 150 high
Yeah.
schoolers, like, absolutely, that's not what this is about, but it's
So-
looking at our current vendor to say, what are his average class sizes when he offers a camp?
Can we throw out a number just for this
60?
motion? 60? Does that work?
60 for the limit on the bigger field?
Field.
For
And
the
that
limit on any field?
And
Oh.
anything over that would have to be approved by Park Commission or City Council.
Yeah, sure.
60
Participants. Maximum
Okay.
of 60
Okay, people.
participants.
Now, how,
So, but that's,
times that on 3, 4, and 5, right?
No.
It'll be 60 on 3, 4, and 5
Correct. Well, it could be 25% more because it's 25% larger in acreage. If we wanted to be consistent with the participants and the field rate structure.
I don't, if we're gonna, the fact that they're getting 3 fields should be enough. I don't want to increase the number of people on it.
Understood.
I mean-
No, and again,
I mean, field 1 and 2 really only ever have 50 kids, 25 kids on it.
exactly.
Yeah.
3, 4, and 5 on a full Saturday, you've got about 60 kids on
Okay.
it. playing.
Oh, easily, yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't
so
think about that.
I would keep it around that.
that's.
Well, we're not doing anything to restrict Little League or girls softball
Right.
here.
No, but I
This
mean,
is for
you might-
outside
That's
use.
That's
for
a good
people who
guide.
are renting the
That's a really
space,
good
not for
guide.
kids coming up to play.
Yeah.
Right.
They can be there all
But that's
day
fair.
Yeah.
So
We're
60.
just talking about rentals.
No,
Yeah,
that's
no,
right.
that's helpful.
Where
That's
it's
helpful.
normally
Because
on
what
the
you
field.
don't want is 3 games going at the same time, because
Correct.
that would be, if you had 10 kids each team, that's 20, 40, 60
plus the
teams,
adults.
plus
Yeah.
the adults, it would be
Agreed.
a zoo.
Do y'all want
does
to
that,
amend your
does that
motion?
ever happen on,
So the
3, 4, and
motion
5?
is,
Saturdays.
Yeah.
the motion will be to amend the field rental rates for 3, 4, and 5 to be $50 per hour with a maximum of 60 participants. If greater than 60 participants, you must get approval from Park Commission or City Council.
Sounds good.
Does that make sense?
Even 60 is a lot.
It is a lot.
Should we put a maximum for fields 1 and 2, just for maybe something other than softball and baseball?
Well, so sometimes fields 1 and 2 field 1 gets rented sometimes for kickball
Camps.
tournaments, like from the Eanes Elementary School as a fundraiser. So you'll have, you could have maybe the first graders out there with their moms doing a kickball tournament with their moms. So you might be, I would think that number, again, maximum of 60 participants total on all these fields, or maybe 40 on the smaller ones and 60 on the larger one. Just based off of acreage. So if we had the number of what the acreage is for 1 and 2, which since they're similar, and then just increase that by the 25% because 3, 4, and 5 is larger. Again, looking at facts, not trying to understand the usage of those field spaces.
That all sounds reasonable. Do you,
Now-
you want to?
Now, what if somebody just wanted to use field 3? That's all they needed.
You rent it for $50 an hour.
They'd still have to rent the entire park. So what we're gonna do is we'll drive away some people that just wanna rent a small piece of the field.
I don't
Yeah,
think.
and they can
I don't
rent
think.
field
They
1
can
or
rent
2.
like
I don't
just one
think-
field.
But they may not need that much space.
I think
What we're
it
doing
had
is
to be inclusive. I
we're
wanted.
constraining usage by treating that like it's always gonna be used as one big field. Is that how it's used?
Currently, that is kind of how
That
it's
is-
already
That's how it
rented out,
works,
because you
yes.
can't really take a tiny piece and then say,
Correct.
dogs can still run over
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
If you would just say, I only want this corner,
So that
there's
is how it's
equipment,
used as one large
It's
field.
treated
Yeah.
like one big field.
You
It's
rent
not,
the whole
it's not
field.
twice the size, it's half again. Isn't that about right?
It's a third.
So if we wanna be
25% more.
equitable here, maybe we run it up to 35 or 40, not to, what are we talking, 50?
Well, what I had suggested was to prorate it proportionately, but then add a $12.50 premium to it because it's a nice open field. You don't have the line bases, so there is a little bit more involved with it, and it's a little bit more of a premium space because you
But
don't.
we wouldn't have to do anything different.
No.
I mean, if someone wants to play soccer on it, they can,
Play soccer.
it's,
All right.
I don't know about the surcharge. I think if we're gonna increase the price because it's bigger, let's honor that proportionally. I don't get the surcharge.
I'd say we just keep it simple, like the motion was presented, and take a vote on it.
How
since
was
we're
the
let's
motion
do that.
presented?
That fields 3, 4, and 5 will be rented at $50 per hour with a maximum of 60 participants. Any number larger than that would need to get approval from city staff.
Let's do it.
Second that.
Why are we doubling it?
City
Just
council.
as a-
Because right now it's 75. We're bringing it down.
And yet, if somebody wanted to rent it, they wouldn't pay $75 to rent. They'd pay $25 an hour to rent whatever they're doing on fields 3, 4, and 5.
Right now,
Because they're
I-9 has,
getting more
Am I
space.
correct? Am I correct in that?
I'm sorry, please.
If somebody wanted to rent 3, 4, and 5 for something, it would be $25.
It'd be 75
$75.
currently.
75,
If they
we're
wanted
bringing
the
it down
whole
to
field.
50.
They yeah. They
And that's
can't
what they
just do-
generally pay if, when they rent it, they rent the whole thing.
Yep.
So we'd be reducing the price, okay?
Yes,
Yep.
by $25 instead of 3 times the amount because it's only 25% bigger than fields 1 or 2.
Yep.
Okay.
All right,
So
we're,
we're doing them a favor.
Could I
We're at
also
our time limit.
confirm- You said approval from staff or approval
City
from
council.
city council
or who,
park commi-
whomever,
city
we'll
council?
take your recommendation on this. If it's
I'd say
something,
staff would be easier, right?
I would think so. I just don't want to ever get into a gray area where we don't know. I mean, you know, I don't know where that buffer would be. If it's, 65 people, I feel comfortable approving that. If it's 100, I don't feel comfortable approving that
Yeah.
without,
Yeah.
review.
We could put a maximum number that you could, that you would be
Approve it
willing
to.
A secret maximum number.
A secret maximum. Okay,
Unpublished.
all right. Maybe approval from staff or,
Up to
if
70
if needed, if
participants.
necessary, we,
Leave it up to your
Or you do
discretion
it the other way
whether-
around where we put 50, but you know it's 60, because 60 is the one that we all just said we feel good about.
that's fine.
Okay.
Again, it's more of,
Yeah.
let's put
It's a
parameters on
guideline.
there so we don't have massive groups coming in to rent.
Okay.
So
Okay.
for up to 50 participants,
So max at
And
50.
you can go to 60.
And
Yeah.
staff can go to 60. Okay. I do also want to keep it where it's not constantly coming
Yeah.
back to
Right.
parks or city council. So
Yeah.
we'll leave it that way. And if it gets to become
We're
a
on the
common
record.
issue,
Yeah.
we'll revisit it.
I was gonna say, there's nothing
Again.
secret
No.
about this. I
No,
mean,
we're
it's
on the record.
We're on
Just
the
make
You
it
can look at
60 and be done.
Yeah.
Anyway, doesn't matter. Let's move on.
Well, let's take a vote.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
in.
And then 1 and
Let's
2
keep
were
this
both
moving.
at 25 an hour with what's the max participants on 1 and 2? Were they also 50?
yes,
50? Okay.
that's fine.
with our 60.
Did we get a second to the motion?
I second.
We did. All right, everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
Everybody opposed say
Yay!
nay. All right, that motion passes. And, go ahead.
Are you about to close it out, or can
Yeah.
I ask a question?
No,
I have
Can I ask a
already been
question?
asked about it's your park day. What did we decide?
It's
That
March
is-
4th,
Okay.
and I'm gonna be, I've got an annual meeting that day. So
Yeah.
unless someone can step in, we have to have somebody that's there to run it. What it means is we would coordinate with the Austin Parks Foundation, and they would bring in mulch, is what they've done in the past. And then you get your volunteers. You don't want to just get a lot of scout troops and youth groups that
You
get
need
here and they
adults.
don't know what they're doing. For instance, when they bring in mulch, you can't put it all the way up to the tree. You wanna work with the staff so that they dump the mulch in the appropriate places so that
Sounds like
it's
we need
easy.
Kevin there. Kevin and his landscaping
Yeah, but we
expertise.
need to, he's not here to see if.
Well,
I-
then let's-
I am
let's-
out
He's
that
not here,
day.
so
I'm
let's,
out of town
let's
too.
pick him to do it.
I'm already leading another different one.
I'm out of town that day, unfortunately.
Well, and I'm out with a different fundraiser, so I can't help.
So unless somebody,
We're calling out to the community right now.
oh yeah. so
We
if
need a
there's-
leader for It's My Park Day.
It's
If you want
actually
to
a
be
lot
the
of
It's My
fun.
Park Day, please
And it's-
contact
it's-
Ashley
the
at
date
the
is
city.
set.
Yes.
If y'all want to run it, we may have some staff volunteers that
Okay, so if anybody steps up and wants to do this, and we can actually ask Phil, maybe Phil might be willing. It goes pretty fast, but we do have to coordinate to get the mulch brought in, and we would want to work with the staff. But it
And
goes
it's less
pretty
than a month away,
Yes.
Yeah, no kidding.
which is crazy to think about, but
Right.
Now, there is another one in the fall, but they don't have the date for that out yet.
And if you didn't do mulch, what you could do is just have, like, literally, we do this at WEA, trash bags, gloves, and just say, anyone who wants to come up here, sign into our log, here's a trash bag, and come
Pull
bring
weeds.
us back, you know, yeah, pull weeds, but
Pick up
also
trash.
just pick up trash, like,
Yeah.
you know, in anywhere in the park.
Well, we don't have that much trash, and pulling weeds
After
is kinda
baseball
sketchy.
starts, sorry, but
They better not leave that much trash. We're gonna
But
raise their fees.
it will start getting busy again.
all right, I would make a motion that we take the last two items off of this agenda and put them at the top of next month's
How about
agenda.
if I do the last agenda item in 2 minutes or less?
Bring it on.
Okay, so, the Rolling Wood Women's Club, they gave me $3,900. To finish what we started last year, you guys, thanks to Don, he really helped me with this. What happened is last year we didn't finish what we started because remember when you couldn't get anything? Well, the benches we tried to get, we couldn't get them. When we did, we were able to get something close. The price was up. So we decided, well, let's get something even better. So we got prices on even better benches that match that one. And they're guaranteed, the warranty on them is like 50 years.
50
So we
years.
get 2 of those, and we get
Awesome.
all these plants, the compost that we need for this year, the mulch, everything. And the Rolling Wood Women's Club has given us $3,900, but we need y'all to help us when it's time to dig the holes for the plants and to spread this stuff. And he's gonna need some help for digging the holes for the cement to, because when we get the benches, they're gonna be stuck to the ground.
We're gonna anchor them.
Yeah, they're gonna be anchored to the ground.
Otherwise, you're gonna see them on a porch. Just teasing.
We're gonna be checking Laura's porch.
Not mine. Not mine.
And also what's included in all that is we're gonna have some plaques made, and you tell them about the plaques.
The company that makes and sells the benches will provide, you buy them, they're $180 or so, but there'll be a bronze plaque, letters cut into it, screwed onto the benches that'll say something about the women's club and the date. And
All right, at
There'll
our,
So
there'll be a
does
commemorative bench.
$3,900 cover this, or what is the motion for?
It covers, we don't need
Oh,
a motion. I'm
we're
just telling
the-
y'all.
oh, well,
We just
congratulations.
help us.
I
congrats.
thought you were coming to us with,
Nope.
I need
At our
another.
next,
Don't need a thing.
at our
That's
next
awesome.
meeting, we're gonna have to
Congratulations.
discuss how much admission we charge to the new butterfly garden.
$10
For all
an
the
hour.
spectators that are gonna be drawn to us,
Yes.
$10
now that
an
y'all
hour,
have made it,
Chad.
yeah, exactly.
Poor thing,
All right.
it's just been frozen. Okay, so my number 6 is put off till next week.
Yeah, we'll put it at the
Okay.
top of the agenda next week.
You know what, I'm out of town March 1 through March 7th. I don't know when the meeting is.
Did anyone do a walkthrough last month?
Didn't we switch to quarterly?
We did,
Yeah, it
but
was-
it was on, I think it was a time because
Maybe it was me. Didn't
I
do
don't
it.
think anyone signed up. I looked, but I had done the last one.
Okay.
It's every quarter now, correct?
Yeah,
So when is the next park commission meeting?
March 6th.
and you're out of town, Don?
I think I get back that morning,
Okay.
but
Might work.
I'll have to confirm.
come?
all-
Just let us know, and
You
if
come
so,
on
we'll,
Braintree.
we'll
We'll
push
just push
the,
it back.
Okay.
we
okay.
won't discuss it without you.
I do want to get this.
I do
This is
too,
kinda
that thing's great.
timely,
Yeah,
and it sort of dovetails in with what you and Kevin are working on.
yeah,
So-
I brought it, I thought it looked great. So, all right, motion to adjourn, everybody say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.
We'll
Thank
send the
you.
link out again for the.
Chad, we vote you in and you go over. I mean,
I
I'm
know.
confidence.
was.
You know what?
a
It was
lot
that
longer
city
meeting.
council
That's what
member.
I'm gonna blame him.
Yes.
We're efficient. It's that long talker.
Kevin, we're calling you out.